And David, you'll probably mention where people can find some of this information, won't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so David, I'll let you take off.
All right. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Before I get into the prices, let me talk just a little bit about the production trends. And I'll be talking not only about alfalfa hay, I'll be talking about all other hay. I won't be talking about baleage, I won't be talking about haylage. When I'm talking about prices and or production, our mission for USDA is just to deal with the dry hay. So that'll be our focus today. We'll take a look at what some of those price sources are that you all can use and that USDA uses. And then we'll look at the trends that we're seeing with that. So some people want to know what I do as a statistician. And by training, I'm an ag economist. That's what my degree is in, but I've spent my career as with the title of a statistician. So I'll give you an idea of what I do. So the first picture up there on the upper left says what my friends think I do. I definitely don't do all of those formulas that statisticians like to play around with. What my colleagues think I do. Third there on the right, what my parents think I do. And then you all may identify with the Pinocchio down below, what society thinks I do. The middle at the bottom, what I think I do. But what I actually do is prepare a bunch of charts. So I'm going to share those bunch of charts with you today, okay? So, and Dr. Halleck, with the same way, I guess he might be a statistician too. He had lots of charts as well for you. All right, so let's take a look at what has happened to hay harvested acres here in Kentucky. And this is data you all report to USDA. So sample of farm operators via surveys of various kinds that are conducted throughout the year. And they get captured into reports, and now you can see that visually as far as the top line, the blue, is the all other hay. So this would be anything that is not alfalfa, and then the bottom line with the red is alfalfa and alfalfa mixes. So we've seen an increase in all other types of hay, but decline in alfalfa acres. So since the high of the alfalfa acreage there, I believe in 1989, you see a little blip there, the most recent high. We've dropped 62% of the acres. Over half of the acres of alfalfa have disappeared from production in the state. Now, some of that could have gone into haylage, into baleage, that sort of thing, because again, we're just measuring here acres cut for dry hay. But we also know that, you know, our dairy industry has been in decline as well, and so we're probably not going to see that alfalfa acres increase. It looks like, though, you know, we're needing to produce about 2 million or cut 2 million acres of all types of other hay to feed our livestock. We've been above that mostly recently since, you know, around 2000, slightly below that now, but, you know, I expect that given good weather, you know, we're going to cut about 2 million acres of hay here, unless we see a significant change in our livestock inventories. All right, so what's been happening to yields? Of course, they bounce around a little bit more. On the all other hay in 2018, we reached a record high there, 2.6 tons per acre. Now, you all would probably not say that that was some of your best hay, probably, right? We had a lot of moisture, so we had a lot of growth, but may not be the best quality. Interesting, I wasn't sure what happened in 2007 because there's a significant decline in yield. Does anybody remember what happened in 2007? Drought. What else? Killing frost. Yeah, so in April, I think I had to look it up. I wasn't living here at the time. First week in April, we had some temperatures in the 20s. And then you said drought later in the year. So I guess not one of the better production years for for hay. All right, and then this is the combination of the acres and the yield with the total production. So again, alfalfa acres have been declining, yields have been about the same, or at least bounced around, and averages about the same, so a decline there. Whereas we've seen a somewhat increasing trend in the other hay production as acres have held relatively steady, and generally over time, on average anyway, the yields have been increasing. So that's the history of hay production, and we've got quite a rich data set going back to the early 1900s there for Kentucky. All right, one of the other things that's measured is the hay that is in storage on farms 2 times a year, December and May. And this is going to track roughly your production, you know, depending on whether if you're starting to feed earlier than other years. As we did in, 2016, we kind of had a dry fall. Some people started feeding hay a little bit sooner maybe than other years. So your number may be a little bit lower there, but generally speaking, it's going to track production fairly well. Now here we're only measuring all hay. That's a combination of the alfalfa and the all other hay. We don't break the two out. And then maize, the other measurement. And again, I think, you know, it generally tracks production, but will be influenced by usage obviously as well. All right, so price data. Now I know why I was asked to do this presentation, because price data actually is kind of hard to get a hold of. We do have some good sources, but because of the nature of hay sales being a lot of private transactions, a lot of that information is not captured, and therefore is not available to be utilized. However, for your current, the 2 sources of pricing data that I'm aware of, and I'm going to talk about today, first is the Agricultural Marketing Service Market News reports. So these could be weekly, they could be monthly, but there's various reports published around the country. I think I counted 26 regular types of reports around the U.S. Unfortunately, not a lot of them are close to us. Missouri, Pennsylvania are a couple that are relatively close to Kentucky, but we don't have an official market news report for Kentucky. That's a part of the Ag Marketing and Service. But these prices are, based on actual sales, and so for you all that may be wanting to purchase, to want to sell, if you want to see what's going on with the current market, that's the place to go. And you will see in the proceedings of this conference the link to the Agricultural Marketing Service hay reports, and so you can go see what those current prices are. They tend to be averages for different types of hay, superior premium, good, fair, that type of indication. The indication of the class of hay is, or the quality is a visual observation. It's not based on testing, but they have guidelines based on protein content or an alfalfa, some of the other characteristics. So it's a pretty good indicator of the quality of hay that's being sold, so the associated price that goes with that. But these markets are very localized, all right? So for example, in Pennsylvania, they have a report based on 3 auction markets that are in the southeast part of the state. So it probably doesn't reflect what's going on in the northeast or the western part of Pennsylvania, for example. Now in Kentucky, we do have the weekly market grain and livestock market report that the Kentucky Department of Agriculture publishes. They do publish reports of hay prices from independent auctions in the state. It's not an official USDA report, but it's a good report to take a look at. I did not utilize any of this in this report, but that is available as well. So you can subscribe to that or look at the Kentucky Department of Ag website for that information. All right, so the National Agricultural Statistics Service then publishes a monthly average price. And the reason for us doing this is it's not going to be something that you as a buyer or seller might want to look at to find out what's going on currently. But USDA is responsible for estimating farm income and providing a report to Congress about farm income so we can gauge the health of agriculture. And so our agency has been given the job of helping with that piece of estimating income. So we're going to put a monthly average price on alfalfa hay and other hay. We're going to weight that based on sales per month and help to establish the income estimates for USDA. So let's see what's been happening here. All right, so like I said, the market news, we don't have a regular report for Kentucky in terms of the same type of information that the Ag Marketing Service has for a couple other states. So I took a look at Pennsylvania just to give you an idea. Most of this information is not electronic, and so I didn't go back a long distance to see what's been going on. But I did take a look at good alfalfa prices here since January 1st of 2018. So a little over 12 months now. And as Ray said, we're seeing some increases in hay prices in that area of the country. The vertical lines there indicate a high and a low because the way that these reports typically are published is they'll give you the average low and the average high. So you've got a range, so that's what I showed on there, and then that dot indicates the average between those two values. So we've seen, across 2018 it was relatively stable, slightly increasing as we got toward the end of the year and into the first of this year. All right, so that's the market news data, and an example of that. We take a look at the NASS data. I looked at 5 years worth of data. And this is not only market news service data, but NASS also conducts a survey of dairy producers, and we're collecting production data on dairies, but we also ask, what is the average price that either you sold hay for or bought hay for? And so we're getting some real-time data to put into those monthly averages. And again, the red is the alfalfa prices, and the blue is the other hay prices. And so we're seeing some of that increase in the monthly average for both types of hay right now over the last several months. And this goes back again to 2009 by month. A good run up in other hay prices there, from about $100 a ton to as high as $150 a ton back in the latter part of, or mid to latter part of 18. But I would expect that that's not going to last. I would expect that a lot of that is hay that's being sold that is better quality. You probably have a lot of hay that you could sell for much less than that. But what you're looking for if you're buying hay is you're looking for some better quality, better nutrition for your animals. So you're probably paying a little bit of a premium for that hay. And so I think that's being reflected in the prices currently for that other hay. So if we get some good weather in 2019 and can make some good hay, I expect those prices to back off. Does anybody disagree with that? Alfalfa, again, I think we probably would see that back off a little, but as you can see, there's some over time here. There's some strength in different parts of the year, even when other hay is not impacted, from some of our equine or dairy markets. So if there's a bad year, if there's a drought in another state, maybe some of that alfalfa is being shipped out of state and is captured in some of those higher prices. And then just for my own curiosity, I was curious whether there was any kind of seasonal trend to the hay prices. And you might guess that there is, at least that was my assumption going into this, but I wasn't 100% sure. You definitely see this with grains where at harvest time is your low price. Some people are selling right out of the field or whatever the case may be, and then as you go through the marketing year, you see an increase in prices. And I was wondering, you know, what's going to happen to hay. So these are not actual prices here. I did some finagling with the data to try to get them to figure out, you know, what is there any kind of trend, and we see that there's more of a trend with the other hay in the middle of the year, which is what you would expect, as that animals are on pasture. You know, you're not purchasing hay, and so you know the demand does not drive prices. Not as much with alfalfa and that red line there. You know, especially if it's like dairy or whatever. You know, you've got production throughout the year. So there may be demand that for hay throughout the growing season, and you know our dairy animals don't often necessarily go on pasture anyway. So there is a seasonal trend to it, although you may not notice it as much if you're buying or selling hay yourself. So that's what we've seen here recently, and be glad to field any questions if you have them.
Question on your pricing.
Pricing.
I'm assuming these are for square bales, all these prices.
So the question was for the pricing, is that for square bales or whatever? So the pricing that NASS does is a ton price, and we're going to average all the different bale types. If you look at the Market News Service data, they publish data on different bale sizes for the different types of hay, grass, alfalfa, whatever, and it tends to be in localized markets. So some of them will tend to publish, a lot of the square bale information. Some of them have the large round. Some of them have the small round. Some of them have the large square. Some of them have the, most everybody has small squares along with either round or square, but it just varies by market. So you have to look at those reports to see. But like I said, the NASS average price is the average of all those different bale sizes, different qualities. So it takes out some of those different variables and averages it. So that can be good, it can be bad, it depends on what usage you're making for them of that data. Pennsylvania, I noticed, also publishes things like baleage prices. So apparently they have some people that bring in, that for sale at their market. So it just depends on the market. You can get, some of this information from that ag marketing service, Market News information. Sir, you had a question.
You said that you did a survey and you asked people what they had selling hay for or what they were buying hay for. Well, what I sell my hay for is different than what the guy buys it for because there's trucking costs in between there. Is that allowed for anywhere in there?
So basically, this would be like FOB prices, so removing the transportation costs. So what was the cost of the hay itself?
One more question for David? Let's give him the big hand.
Thank you.